Welcome to the fall edition of SIG Commit. We're excited to demonstrate the latest innovations in Sigrid, our software assurance platform. Innovations that set your people up for success. Today, our program centers around enterprise architects. Explore how Sigrid enhances transparency, aligns developer goals with enterprise objectives, and bridges the gap between strategic business goals and technical milestones. And now, please give a warm welcome to our CEO, Bart Famers.
Welcome to Commit. Commit is Software Improvement Group's premier online event that we run twice a year, where we update you on developments inside our company, developments that we think matter to you. Again, this time we have a lot to share with you, and I'm very excited about what it is that we will share. I'll get to that in a second. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Bart Famers. I am the CEO of Software Improvement Group since the start of this year. And ever since joining this group of about 150 consultants and engineers who operate globally, helping customers every day in their software engineering efforts, I am genuinely enthused and very enthusiastic about the talent and the extraordinary expertise that rests inside this company. All of that expertise that has been developed over 2 decades has been put together in a platform. And it's this platform that we've been developing over the last 4, 5, 6 years, and that we have very exciting updates to share on with you later today. Specifically, we will update you on what it is that we've done with enterprise architects. We had a survey, and we've learned from them what it is that they particularly want from this platform, and we will update you on the outcomes of that survey. Second, we will share with you what the developments are inside of that platform. And then third, we will give you a sneak preview of what it is that is about around the corner in the months and quarters to come. I will hand it over now to Joost and Dennis. Joost is the head of Agile Product Development, and Dennis is the head of Product, and they will take you through the next hour, and we'll be with you at the end of it for any questions. Thank you, and really enjoy this online webinar.
Thank you, Bart. At SIG, we target multiple roles in the IT organization, and we actually believe that's one of our strengths. So, of course, last time, if you attended SIG Commit, we elaborated a bit on a process that we are now using to have more information about the needs and the challenges of each role. So our first focus is the enterprise architect, and the reason we picked that role in particular is because we believe that they have an important voice in both the technical organization, but also towards management. So last time we mainly gave an update on the outcomes of these interviews. Of course, since then we have addressed many of these challenges, both in Sigrid and outside of it, and we are not satisfactory with just releasing that and hoping for the best. Of course, we want a feedback loop where we go back to the architects, both the people we talked to back in the beginning, but also new architects we didn't previously interview. And we wanted to hear from them, does this indeed improve the situation, and how does this relate to your challenges? So from that, we distilled 7 lessons about the role of the enterprise architect that we would like to share with you today. So with me here is Joost van der Meerakker, our proposition manager. And Joost, of course, you have an important role in this agile process. If you had to pick one point what these architects say is the top issue, what would you name?
Yeah, to start with, we see that enterprise architects can bridge the gap between management and developers. In previous commit, we saw that a handshake is needed between enterprise architects and developers on quality metrics. In practice, we learn that it's done by managers. And the result is that sometimes this leads to too challenging goals. And when the goals are too challenging for the developers, it might become unrealistic, frustrating, and maybe lead to unhappy developers, and in the end could result in higher turnover. And that again is a management problem, and we don't want that. The cause is that the managers and the developers, they live in 2 separate realities. And the enterprise architect is able to mitigate that and mediate between the 2 to ensure that the objectives are still challenging but reachable, and the developers will be happy in order to work on that. And there's a better mutual understanding. So that's the first lesson that we have learned. And now we're talking about realities, this also leads to the next lesson.
Yeah, true. One of the things we do in Sigrid is that we visualize the architecture, and then, I mean, not the architecture how it was designed or invented at the beginning of the project, but how the architecture is actually implemented in the code. So we scan the code and then we make a picture out of it. So what we learned is that this picture in itself, so even without all the quality ratings, without the benchmarks, just having that picture is already very useful to people, because not everyone has the same idea on how the architecture looks. And of course, then if you show this to, for example, a lead developer, they will say, but like, doesn't everyone know this already? And that is to some extent true, but you know this, but that doesn't mean that every other stakeholder is aware of all the details. And what you see a lot is that on the top level architecture, so the big picture, there is some alignment between different people, but the further down you go, the more people have their own perception of reality. And that's also something where we think that just providing this visualization can make a difference. So that also means that we need some more options to kind of elaborate on what you see in the picture and to customize it. We will touch back upon that later in this event. But the power of visualization is really something that we learned. And that also relates a bit to kind of how people react emotionally to how you bring certain messages, right?
Yeah. Yeah, what we see there is that if we look at how that works, is that people are more interested in the trend instead of the absolute state of the situation. And it's important. This is important for all the stakeholders. Improving quality is not an overnight process. It requires a long time of little steps, and it can be very frustrating for people when they don't see how they progress along the way. And we want to prevent, of course, the computer says no situation, that you're looking at a red screen every time, and it keeps you demotivated of further progress. So in the end, we want to have positive feedback in the process, to keep people positive, productive, and stimulate a positive feedback culture. And I think that is very important for us, but also for our clients to stimulate that. And we learn also that this is information, this is important. But what we also learned is that information, the full information flow to the teams, that needs a little bit of fine-tuning. Can you elaborate on that, Dennis?
Yeah, that relates to what you said about positive feedback. So because transparency is good, but transparency is also a little bit scary sometimes. So especially if people think that their manager is going to misunderstand things. So what happens a lot is that people ask us, can we restrict what people can see? So for example, that the developer can only see his or her system, or that the manager cannot see the details. Mm-hmm. So to some extent, Sigrid does allow this kind of gatekeeping, so that you say that these people can only see these systems and these other people can only see these other systems. It's possible. If you ask us, is this a good idea to ensure the best possible software quality in your organization? We would say no. So we do support it, but we do not recommend it. And what we want to offer is instead a compromise. So we think this transparency is very useful. So you need to be able to see with the organization what's happening, because like without the transparency, everyone stays in the dark in their own little reality. So what we do is like you have the transparency, but we add context. So a lot of the times that people are afraid about showing things to their manager is because they are afraid that the management will misinterpret what's going on. For example, a system might be really hard to maintain, but maybe that's because it's very old, or because it has been underinvested in, or because the technology stack is old, or because the team is new. There's many different reasons. Mm-hmm. And if you add that information and that context in Sigrid, we believe that if management does in fact see these results with the context added, they will be able to interpret correctly what's going on. And then you don't have to be so scared anymore, and you can open the door with this transparency. So again, yes, it's possible to hide information, but for a healthy work culture, we encourage that you don't do that, basically.
Yeah.
So that's basically the area of customization on more the context level. There's also some technical customization going on in there. So later on, we will have a bit more detail on that. But in general, we want people to not just hide information, but just add context to make it more interpretable.
Yeah, and if we look towards agile way of working, because many organizations work that way, we see that agile way of working requires real-time feedback loops. And yeah, the reason for that, agile is also a sort of self-management and more ownership for the teams, so they have more own responsibility. And there's also the risk then that these teams produce software but still do not comply at the end of the sprint to what the company really wants. And it's really frustrating that when you have to throw away hard work and in the end start all over again. And of course we want to prevent that.
It also relates to the feedback you mentioned earlier, right? So that if you want positive feedback, it's not necessarily positive to say, let's throw it out after 6 months.
No, exactly. So it should be able to track your progress during the sprint for those teams. And if we look at our workflow that we designed out of the first interviews, we actually do that. And I think that is very valuable. And it's not only valuable for the developers, but also for architects and managers, because it's transparent for everybody how the progress is going, and there are no surprises afterwards. However, we are talking now about our platform, but we also hear a lot of stuff in these interviews on other tools. And we're not living in a bubble, of course. So we see that many of our stakeholders are currently using other tools. How is our strategy towards that, Dennis?
Yeah, so it's a bit playing with terminology, but we always called Sigrid a platform. But what we mean there is that indeed we don't expect Sigrid to take over everything in the organization from scratch, because people do have other tools that they use and they are happy with them and it fits their workflow. So what we want Sigrid to be is this overarching platform where all these different stakeholders can have this shared reality of their entire software portfolio. So that might mean different things depending on the organization. There are many clients where we actually do provide all of it, basically. But the average situation is that people already have some information in other systems. So for example, the developers use GitHub, which is where their code is located and the development process exists. Managers use something like ServiceNow, which is more of the business perspective. And what we do with Sigrid is we integrate with all of those other tools in both directions. So to use the same examples I mentioned, it's important to add context, so you can just import that context from the system where it currently lives. So similarly with GitHub, the developers are already working there, so we want to have a way that they can send code from GitHub into Sigrid. And then they also get feedback immediately from Sigrid back into GitHub, which enables what you mentioned with the sprint process. So your normal code review interface, you already see information from Sigrid there. So that has already been our strategy with Sigrid. Of course, that's also growing a bit. We're adding more and more integrations. So towards the end of today, we will give some more updates on where to find the list of available integrations and how they work. But purely in terms of vision, the added value of Sigrid is that it combines all of this information from different people and different perspectives and different tools, and provides this one view on top of it for everyone, also adding the benchmark information and the guidance that we bring as SIG. So we talked about some benefits of this approach, but actually software quality itself also needs benefits, right? And we know from the earlier interviews it can be hard to quantify that. So it's clear that it costs something, namely money and time. But what do you get out of that? And people also had something to say about that.
Yes, exactly. Last commit we stated that the financial KPIs are very important to speed up the process, start working on modernization scenarios. But what we learn now, meanwhile, is that it's not only the financial KPIs that are important, it's also the time to market and the innovation. And also those are very hard for an enterprise architect to tackle and to convince other people upon. So if you make a conclusion towards us, it's like extra homework we have to do on the modernization scenarios, which are still in the works. You will talk about that a little bit later, for us to include that. Because in the end, what we see is, besides the money side, companies want to also become more competitive, and therefore it's needed to take into account these time to market and innovation. And if you compare it like, you can keep on the lights all the time with your IT budget, but in the end, you want to shift towards continuous innovation in the future. And that's where we aim to help you with.
Yeah, and it's of course we are talking now about lessons learned from enterprise architects, but there is kind of a secret line in between all of these tips because we said the word management a lot, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we now concluded that management is equally important in this whole workflow. So we started a second research project focused on the manager. And actually we are now scheduling the interviews and we will share the findings in Q2 2024. So that will be done there and everybody can be invited again. Now we are going to show some things we just discussed, and we will start with the interaction between enterprise architects and managers. Ken and Shima, over to you.
Hello everyone. Today we are going to show you how to align your business goals with your technical roadmap using Sigrid. My name is Ken and I'll be playing the role of a manager today.
And my name is Shima and I'll be playing the role of enterprise architect. Can you explain to us why it is important to align business goals with technical objectives?
Yes, so aligning business goals with technical objectives is very important because it ensures that everyone in the company works towards the same overarching objectives. Mm-hmm. This eliminates working in silos and it fosters a culture of collaboration. So by translating these more abstract business goals into measurable technical milestones, teams can track and report progress a little bit more easy and meaningful to both technical people and also non-technical stakeholders. So this will create a shared understanding of across departments and it makes it easier to evaluate success and also to make informed decisions.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's get into it then. Let's discuss the business goals.
Great. So as a manager, I have 3 main business goals this year. First, I want to shorten the time to market. Secondly, we want to reduce our cybersecurity breaches. And as the third one, we expect a huge increase in our usage for our platform. So we want to work on improving the system scalability. Yeah. So Shima, can you tell me how we can make sure that our technical roadmap aligns with these business goals?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the first goal, for shortening the time to market, it is important to discuss with the teams and look at the overall state of our portfolio with all of our applications, which we did. And we discussed that the state of the systems are at a pretty good state. So we decided to set an objective of 3.5 maintainability for all of our systems. This is important to maintain a sustainable, future-proof, debt-free, or at least reduce the amount of debt so we can speed up our delivery.
That sounds great. So can we set that objective in Sigrid?
Yeah, we can do that. Let's start doing that. Okay, so I'm very excited to set these objectives on the Sigrid platform. So with the team, we can start working on them. Right now, on the portfolio objective page, this is a new page and it is under development. However, I know that you use Sigrid and you're more comfortable with, or you're more used to the portfolio overview. We still have this view, you can navigate to it and still work with it and have an overview of what's going on. But since today we're going to set portfolio objectives, I'm going to navigate back and then we can start setting our objectives. So Ken, based on our previous discussions, I already went ahead and gave it a try and set an objective for the open source health max vulnerability.
Great.
And previously we discussed that we don't want any risks that are higher than medium for this target. I can see that with the progress, this objective applies to 17 of our systems and 12 of them are compliant. So that's really good. We can only focus on 5 of our systems to then meet our objective. I forgot why it applies to 17 of our systems, but in the rationale, I can see that this target applies to our public-facing systems, and we expecting to increase our cybersecurity there as well by addressing or ensuring that there are no third-party vulnerabilities with medium or high severity findings.
Great.
Okay, so let's now set up the new portfolio objective. And here our goal is to shorten our time to market by ensuring we have a sustainable and future-proof software. This is done by maintaining and reaching a maintainable target of 3 stars, which we agreed on. So I'm going to navigate to the Add Portfolio Objective button. I'm going to first select our capability, which is maintainability. I'm going to choose the objective type, which is also maintainability, and set the target, which we agreed on. Moving on, we also discussed that we want to set all these objectives, or this objective, for all of our systems. Previously, we set public-facing for the open source health, but now it's more universal. So I'm going to click on the Apply to All Systems, and it's working, looks nice. And then moving on to the rationale. So I like to use the rationale to discuss our business goals and tie it back to our technical objectives. So this is the place I use to put this information. And then this is really nice because then the entire team can have a look at it, and if I'm not there, they can also still link it back and have a look and be aware of our decisions. Moving on, I can see in the summary that everything looks good. Let's save and finalize, and I can see that the maintainability objective is now on the table.
So I see that we only need to improve 12 systems and then we achieve our goal.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, so we were on the right track. So shall we discuss the next goal?
Yeah, so our next goal is to reduce our cybersecurity breaches. So maybe we can also translate that into a technical objective?
Yeah, so I also discussed this with the team, and we discussed that with the state of our systems, it will be difficult to universally for our entire application to reach the goal we want to, but we can do this in steps and by focusing on the areas that are most vulnerable. This is our public-facing systems, and there we think that we should not have any vulnerabilities that are higher than low severity. And this is the decision we made. So maybe you can give it a try. Would you like to set the objectives?
Yeah, can I also set this objective?
Yes, you have admin rights, so you should be able to do it.
That's great.
Yep.
Let's try it.
Sounds good. Here it is.
So I can add a portfolio objective, then select security as the capability. We want to look at the maximum severity of vulnerabilities that we will allow in Sigrid, and then select low because we don't want security vulnerabilities higher than low.
Exactly.
So we discussed that we want to prioritize it first for our public-facing systems because these are the most important for now. So let's select the public-facing systems. Great. And we can add the rationale where I can tie it back to our business goals. So everyone is aligned on those. Then we can add them. And I see that we still have a lot of work to do to make our platform secure.
So you should work with the team to get this ready.
Yeah.
So there was also a third goal that you discussed, and it was to improve the system scalability to handle increased user load. So when we discussed with the team, we decided that, hey, this is a lot of work, a lot of cost for our entire portfolio. We need to narrow down and prioritize. Can you give us a little bit more explanation at what's going on and where we should focus?
So the system that we think is our highest priority is Artemis because we expect a huge growth in usage in the coming year. So maybe we can focus on that first.
Yep, actually we had a discussion with the team earlier about this system. And when we were looking at it, we realized that the state that it is now, if we set the objective at 3.5, then we are in the right path to get to where we want. So I am going to navigate to Sigrid again. And what you're looking at is the landing page, which is the portfolio overview. And I'm going to find Artemis in the search bar so we can set these objectives. So this is different from what we did before. Before we were setting objectives at the portfolio level because we were saying we want it for all of our systems or we want it for a group of our systems, but now we just want it for one system. So we need to set a system level objective. So you have to navigate to the system overview, which is what you're seeing right now, the system overview. On the top, you can see it rate by risk, which is what we know. And then you can see a system detail over here. And then on the other side, you can see the system objective overview.
And here I can see that some of the portfolio objectives we set before also apply for this system.
Yeah, it's already inherited, so it looks very nice. Everything is here.
Okay.
So let's have a look at Artemis, architecture quality. If you look at the risk assessment of it or the risk overview, you can see that for architecture, the star rating is 3.1 now. So I think that the agreed upon 3.5 is indeed achievable and realistic. So I'm going to navigate to Modify Objectives button. Click on it and then navigate to find the architecture card where I can define the objective for it. I'm adding an objective of 3.5 stars and saving it.
Great. So now we've set all these objectives. Is there a way to see all the portfolio objectives in one view?
That's a very good question. Yes, you can. So if you go back to the portfolio overview, and then here you see rate by risk and rate by objective completeness. So if you navigate to this one, you can see how your systems are doing with the objective against the targets that you set. So I think we can already find Artemis here somewhere, and we can see it's partially met.
Okay, this is a nice view because this actually shows us the priority with the business context we added.
Yes, exactly, and we can work on it with our teams to see how to move forward. So shall we conclude and also hand it over to the team?
Yeah, so as you can see, we successfully aligned our business goals with our technical objectives using Sigrid. And this ensures that all the teams know what to focus on, and it helps us track progress effectively.
Exactly, and the best part is that the objectives we set are achievable, they're realistic, they're aligned with the team, they're aligned with the business context, and everyone is on the same page so we can start working.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's pass the word to Kriti, who is going to help us improve the architecture quality.
Thanks, Ken.
As Shimine can explain that setting objectives is very important to have a shared view, specifically when you have to interact with people outside your team. But it is equally important to have a view that is team-focused and where direct improvements can be made by the team members. That is exactly where architecture quality comes into play. In the past 2 quarters, considerable amount of improvements and additions have taken place in the architecture quality model. Most of it is driven by the feedback that Dennis and Joost mentioned, which is customization is essential as long as it doesn't reduce transparency. It is important to understand the reasoning behind why customization is so important. We have many options to customize the architecture view. One of the main reasons is that the architecture quality works at multiple levels, whereas maintainability works with a single level. Now, usually there is a general consensus on the top level architecture, but things are more interesting in the internal architecture. And this internal architecture is generally maintained by different teams. In a team, people may only want to focus on their components since it is realistic to realize improvements within their sprints. Therefore, it is essential that they have the ability to customize this view according to their needs. So let me show you with an example of what all you can customize and how this can be realized in Sigrid. So let's look at an example. Here is the configuration file for one of my systems, which is called Artemis, and it is part of the Open Demo portfolio. Now I'm going to enable architecture quality in this configuration file. As you can see in the bottom right corner, it says Sigrid scope configuration file, which means it will automatically give me syntax highlighting for this configuration file. We recently introduced this. It becomes really helpful if you're editing file in your IDEs. It reduces the amount of errors that you would make in the configuration file. So now let's make the architecture quality enable. So it automatically takes it. First I set this to true. Okay, so let's take the first one. The first customization that can be done is marking certain type of dependencies as undesirable. Now, what does that mean is when Sigrid analyzes your code, sometimes there are dependencies that in your initial design, they were not present, but now in your implemented architecture that they are present. This doesn't mean there's something wrong with the architecture, but this means that you need to have the conversation as to how this dependency came into the place when it was not intended. So you can mark such dependencies undesirable, which means in Sigrid you will see these dependencies in the red color. And how you can do is in your configuration file, you can mention undesirable dependencies. And then you can mention the source and target. In my case, the source is from tools to UI portal. And in my case, also, I want to specify not just from the source to target, but also from UI portal to tools. So that means target to source. That's also undesirable. So I will set bidirectional to true. in this way, and I will show you in a second when I have also shown you other customizations, that how this is viewed in the Sigrid platform. Now the second one that we are going to talk about is remove dependencies. Now what this does is, if there are dependencies that are detected by the system but are not intended, which means these are false positives, these are not implemented in your architecture, and for some reason due to the static analysis these dependencies are detected. You can now remove these dependencies. It's similar manner, you can have to just type the source and target. In my case, the source is Hadoop client project. And my target is the cloud storage. And this will remove the dependency that exists between this source and target. Now let's move to the third type of customization that's possible, and that is the grouping feature. So if you write grouping, then it asks you for a name and include. What it does is, now you can group certain components in a group, and you can name this group as to what action you could take place. In my example, I named this group as legacy front-end applications. This means there are some applications in my architecture that are now legacy, and I would pick them up in when we decide to unify this UX of the system, and then I will pick this up. So I include this in a group, and I include the names of the system. So the name of the systems are UI portal, and the second one is UI viewer. And I will show you in a second how this is viewed in the platform. What is interesting is you can also write a message, for example, annotation, which says will be modernized during our UX unification initiative. So this way the teams also know that these are the legacy front-end applications, and I've made this, I've also added some context to it saying that this will be picked up during the unification initiative, and this will then be modified. So now that we have made our customizations in the configuration file, all that is left is to save this file and send it with the normal publish that with Sigrid CI pipeline, and run the analysis for one more time. And now assuming that I've done all of that, let's move to Sigrid and see what the results are for these custom configurations. So now let's jump to Sigrid and see what are the results of the customizations that we made in our configuration file. So as I mentioned, my system was Artemis. Let me go into Artemis, go to the Explorer. And now the first thing that we did was to make the dependencies from tools to UI portal and vice versa undesirable, which means that these dependencies will then be highlighted in red color. So if you look at this one, these dependencies are now seen in red color, and this basically tells the user that these dependencies both ways are undesirable, and this also catches the eye, which means everybody who is logging into Sigrid knows that there is something different with these particular dependencies than other dependencies, and hence becomes the point where you can have conversation about why this would be the case. The second customization that we made was removing the dependency, and that was between the Hadoop project to the cloud storage. And if you look at this one versus this one, there was a dependency before, and now when I stated remove the dependency, then that dependency has been removed. The third one here is the grouping feature. So that was, I included two components in the grouping feature, which is UI portal and the UI viewer. And there you see this dotted box, which groups them into one, you see this dotted box around these two components, and name of that box is the legacy front-end applications. So I put them in one box and I label them as legacy front-end applications. And at the bottom you also see the annotation that I mentioned, which is that this will then now be picked up in the UX unification initiative. So similar ways, there might be some components in your architecture that you might want to group them together. This necessarily doesn't have to be part of any initiation, but can also be part of some components that are handled by team A versus other components that are handled by team B. So the grouping feature can be very useful in terms of different ways how you can group these components according to some type of classification. So now you just saw the results of the configurations. Although I know it is still, there are many other configurations that are possible in architecture quality. And for those details, I would recommend you to use the documentation that we have. This is something that we have upscaled again in the past 2 quarters. There's significant amount of information about the platform, also about the architecture quality and what all you can do in terms of customizations in your scope file in the documentation. There is also SIG Academy, where you can upscale your learnings about the platform. Leonardo will now tell you more about what we have in store right now and what's coming in future in both documentation and academy. Over to you, Leonardo.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, so I will be talking a little bit about the SIG Academy, but before we do that, I would love to introduce you to our documentation page, which is open source and does not require user login details. So simply by writing docs.sigridsays.com, you will arrive at this page. And what we have here is a sort of guide on how to use Sigrid, the information that you need to get set up, so you can actually have a look at the different topics that we have available. So it's about how to get set up with Sigrid, how to do the user management. Once you're a bit more set up and you have some systems, you can then learn a bit more about what the capabilities are of Sigrid. So we have information on portfolio level capabilities, as well as system level capabilities. And further down, you actually also have information for the different user bases. So we have the workflows, how Sigrid integrates into the workflow for particular users in their daily tasks. And we have information also on Sigrid CI and how to integrate that, as well as some external integrations, which we also include here. Last but not least, please keep in mind that we do have a reference tab, and anything that you don't find in the other places, you can of course find here with regards to, for example, scope configuration, etc. You can of course reach Sigrid directly from the documentation page or contact the support team. Moving on to the SIG Academy and how that differs from the documentation page. The SIG Academy is another solution in which we hope to empower our users in their usage of Sigrid. So in order to reach the Academy currently, you have to have access to Sigrid. But before we cover this, for those of you without access to Sigrid, there is a way to get a feel for what the SIG Academy has to offer when navigating from our website. So at softwareimprovementgroup.com, you can actually click on our solutions on the top menu and further down on SIG Academy on the side. When you click there, you can learn a little bit more about the Academy. But more importantly, right at the top, you have the option to watch the Academy demo. And what that does is it actually takes you to a little demonstration course from the Academy. In this particular case, talks about the Sigrid's key functionalities, part 1. So it's going to talk about portfolio level capabilities primarily. And so it's a good introduction, which allows you to really explore what the dashboard looks like and what everything in Sigrid is, the different bits of information that you can get out of it, and a bit more of information of our vision of how Sigrid can help you and what it brings to your work. Once you have Sigrid, however, the very first access to the Academy is through the support button at the top right menu. It's the question mark. When you click that, you end up on this page. And here on the right side, you see useful links, and you click then visit SIG Academy. We are currently working on improving the access to the Academy to make it a bit more easy and accessible. And for this, we are revamping the entire Academy. This is the current way to get into the Academy. The moment that we have the new Academy with a better way to enter, we will notify you about this closer to the time. Once you click to enter the SIG Academy, you actually can see the Academy itself. You can learn about who we are as SIG. If you don't already know, you have a link to go directly to Sigrid. And you can also enter the documentation through this button at the top. Furthermore, at the Academy, we have a lot of e-learning content that you can use to enrich your knowledge and empower yourself as a user of Sigrid or Mendix QSM. We have courses that cater to all of our users and introduce you to some of the key functionalities. We are working on additional content as we are ever improving and growing our content base. And one such course that we're working on is the Enterprise Architect. This one is very near to completion and will be published very soon, along with several other user roles that will also be added to the Academy. So this is something to look forward to, and I really hope that this, between the documentation and the Academy, that you will feel empowered enough as a user of Sigrid. And now you can go back to Dennis and Shima, who will walk you through the roadmap.
Thank you, Leonardo. So let's recap what we talked about today. So if you've attended prior editions of SIG Commit, you're very familiar with the structure you're seeing now. So these are the 3 objectives that we have as part of our Sigrid roadmap. So the reason that we structure our roadmap like this is to emphasize why we do certain things that we consider important. So the first element here is the stakeholder-specific workflows. So that's of course something that featured very heavily today. Initially going from the perspective of the enterprise architect, you heard from me and Joost about the new advancements we made there, as well as new ideas that we came up with or things we learned from the interviewed architects. So an element that was very important there is how architects relate to management and the development teams, which was outlined by Shima and Ken in their demo session. So the fact that Shima is joining me here is of course not a coincidence. Shima is in fact our product owner for this objectives workflow. So Shima, when we go in the direction of when people can expect these things to come up with Sigrid, what can you tell us about that?
So earlier we showed you guys 3 ways to set these objectives, one of which is at the system level. This is already on Sigrid platform, so everybody can go and set their objectives, especially for their unique systems. However, for the portfolio objectives, we're going to do that in 3 stages. So the portfolio objective was what I showed you guys when you could set objectives for a group of systems. First, we will do the first demo that I showed, which is applying the objectives for all of your portfolio. And then the next rollout would be to add those specific conditions, public-facing or additional metadata. So we will also do that in 2 steps. And that is what we have for the objectives. But we also want to match our objectives and make sure that our managers and enterprise architects are connected to their developers. So we also have applied the same logic and sentiment to Sigrid CI. where managers can set their objectives there, and also developers can get feedback for what they're doing in a different approach and in an increment, and get encouragement also for the achievements that they're making.
Right, and that's related to what Joost said, that sometimes managers are a bit factual and not particularly receptive to the context that developers are in, so they only point out the risk and not necessarily what went well.
Exactly.
So what you did here, both in objectives and in Sigrid CI, should also partially address that, right?
Yes, exactly, and they can discuss this in their roadmaps as
Right.
well. Yeah. So I can hand this back to you so you can take it over and discuss the rest of the roadmap.
Right, indeed, because another element that we talked about today is architecture quality. So, of course, you've heard about architecture quality at length in prior editions of SIG Commit. You probably have already used it because it's been kind of pre-production for the last 6 months. So what we're going to do now is that we are now ready to roll out architecture quality to the entire Sigrid customer base, meaning that every single one of you will be able to access this functionality. So that also means that we now support all 300 plus technologies that are covered by the Sigrid base. So we're going to do it in a couple of steps. So architecture quality will be available to everyone starting from November 1st. So of course that doesn't necessarily mean that we just switch it on and then hope for the best. There is an onboarding process attached to this. So throughout the month of November you will be contacted by our customer success teams. And they're going to work with you to do the technical onboarding, maybe to go through the basic page, and also to answer any questions you might already have. Of course, it's not our expectation that every single question can be handled specifically in the initial onboarding. Therefore, we have also planned an Ask Me Anything session, specifically focused at architecture quality. And that will allow you to discuss directly with Kriti, who also presented today, on any issues you might run into or things you find that you're not sure about or want to know more information. We get back to this at the end to explain how you can register. So that was quite a bit about our objective towards stakeholder-specific workflows, but we have 2 more. So these are slightly smaller updates, but nevertheless very important. So one of them is related to supporting large portfolios, and until now we had mostly done this through technical features. So for example, allowing you to onboard your own systems, to do self-service configuration. But as Leonardo told us today, there's also a human element in there, because that means larger portfolio, more people. And of course, we are happy to give trainings or to help you out with our support team. But with very large portfolios, the number of people also can get into the hundreds or even thousands. So that also means that the self-learning experience is increasingly important there. So as mentioned by Leonardo, the Sigrid documentation is available today to everyone. It's actually publicly available. The SIG Academy is also available, but that one is only available to Sigrid users. So you need an account to log in, basically. But both of them are available starting now and will continue to grow over the coming months. So, of course, technical features regarding skill are not going away entirely. They will continue to exist to some extent. And one area that we are working on is user management. So we're not quite ready yet to share some concrete improvements right now, but you will see this popping up over the coming weeks and months. Because also more people, and also considering this transparency aspect we discussed with Joost, that means it's more important that you can configure who can do what. The last topic is the need to grow the platform. So we also touched upon this a bit already, and that's related to these integrations. So important to know, this is not new. We already have many integrations that we support today. So these are the logos. Of course, we do not expect you to know every single logo from memory, but this is just to give you a feeling on how many of them there already are. On the Sigrid documentation, you can find a full overview of each integration per category. For example, developer integrations for Sigrid CI and, for example, security integrations, as well as instructions on how to enable this integration and how to use it. Also important to note, it's not only integrations with third-party products, it's also integrations with you and with your custom process. So we also provide an API that you can use to integrate Sigrid in your specific workflow for your organization. So should you arise at any integration that we don't have yet, we are prioritizing these things based on the amount of interest they attract. So like we support 300 technologies already, we also expect to support many more integrations. So please let us know if your preferred integration is not yet in this list, and then we'll make it part of our roadmap. So that was quite a long list. That said, that wasn't everything we're going to do in the coming months. So we intend to work in an agile way, which also means, as I think Shima mentioned earlier, we want to leave some room in the backlog so that we can always address your feedback. So if you have feedback on the existing features, to deepen them, to address edge cases, to make them more intuitive to use, please reach out to us, because this is also a very important topic. The goal is not only to have more features, but primarily to have people use the features and also to derive benefits from them. So that's it in terms of the roadmap. But what if people want to reach out beyond just attending these SIG Commit events, Shima? So what can you tell us about that?
So it's good that you said that in the coming weeks we're also going to make some updates to user management, for example, and you don't have to wait for the commit. You can also already go to the documentation and Academy to get more information, so that's really nice. We're also bringing back the Sigrid newsletter, which is going to go out monthly. Also another way to get information. But there was a lot of interest to get more updates more frequently, and this is how we can communicate further with you guys. The commits are really nice, but a lot of you guys are also want to have a way to ask us questions, and Ask Me Anything sessions are a way to do that. So we have 2 sessions coming up for these kind of interactions. You saw a lot of things happening today. You saw a lot of things on our roadmap. And in the Ask Me Anything session for the first one, you can ask us your questions. So you can use the QR code, or you can go to the website. We also have a second one for the architecture quality on November 23rd, is it?
Yep.
I think so, yeah.
And so, of course, like, this is a recurring thing. So we're listing the 2 upcoming events for the Ask Me Anything, but this is a continuous process. And also here we are picking the topics based on the ones that have most of your interest. So if you think that I have very deep questions related to, for example, security, don't feel shy to reach out, because we are also planning this based on what has the most benefit for people. So as mentioned, we are going to have a next edition of SIG Commit, but also with these kind of communications, we want to be a bit more agile. So as Shima mentioned, there will be the Ask Me Anythings, there will be the documentation, there will be just reaching out and telling you your opinion on the things we added and things you potentially miss, or things you really like, or things you really hate even. And we want to be in contact continuously also. So as a closing off, thank you, and let's keep in touch.